Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and today we're going to be doing the mileage on an E36 dashboard. So this has come as a set from a customer. We have a dashboard and an engine ECU, and there's an engine swap going on. So one of the things I've already done, I've already disabled the immobilizer in the engine ECU. This is a 3 to 8, and I believe then this should be the 6-cylinder clocks that will be going into it, but we need to sort out the mileage. Now I've just powered him up, and the first thing I've noticed is our mileage is screwed up. So we've got bad contacts on there. So that means I can't tell what the mileage is at the moment, and that's something that's pretty important. I just powered him up first off, and we have, here's our two plugs. This one here, I wrote down next to it. The white one is X16, the blue one X17, and all I've needed to do to get him to wake up is a ground in there, which is pin 24, goes off to our ground. And then on the blue plug, we are the fourth one up, which is pin 4. That goes to power. And that's equivalent to just like a switched ignition. And that's enough to get him to wake up and then show me what the mileage is. And we also can see on this one that we have a coding plug. So we need to do the coding plug as well. So when you're changing the stuff on this, the mileage, you need to figure out what's going to be the algorithm between what we're displaying on the cluster and what's stored inside the chips. Sometimes it's stored in kilometers, sometimes it's miles. We'll figure that out, but to know what that is, I need to compare what I can see on the screen on the front with the data that's in these chips. Now, because I can't see the data on the front, I can't see the mileage, I'm going to need to try and fix that first off to see what it is. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to get the back off. And with those screws undone, we can pull him apart and our two halves separate. So you can see how these are all on little pins that push through into our various contacts here to run different motors and so on. There's our screen, and this is the chip, or at least one of the chips where the mileage is in. It's stored in here and also in that coding plug. So we're going to need to get this chip off and the coding plug. But the first thing we want to do is see if we can sort out that mileage display and get that reading a little bit better. Now he's powered up that way. That would be our fuel light on. But we can see we've only got the top half of the display. I don't know if that might be trying to say 122,000. The kilometer bit almost seems to be lit up. And that little dot after would be the tamper dot, but we're not too concerned about that at the moment. But a little bit of pressure on this, and we are getting some stuff flicking around, but it's not really coming back. In fact, maybe down there might be a little bit better. So we've got some bad contacts in there, so let's have a look and see if we can clean that up. So there's the front bezel on the mileage display, the little LCD screen. You can see those two clips on that front edge, one on the side. There is another one down in here as well I'll need to get to. And there are going to be rubber contact strips that run all the way from the circuit board there up to the back of the glass to make the contacts. And most likely there's a bad contact between there. Maybe that rubber has sort of shrunk a little bit with age. So I'm going to pull this off now. I'm going to try and clean those strips up and see if we get that to read any better and actually be letting read what our current mileage is. That's him unhooked and he lifts off, and that then gets us into our glass and our mileage display. So let's pull that out now. And that's him out. Now with I suppose the LCD, there's it has managed to sort of hold on to a couple of numbers, but it's come out, and so we just have a rubber contact strip on the top running through into those contacts, and then this bit here, the very brightly coloured mask, is what sets the light. So there is obviously the orange for the mileage and your service stuff, and then obviously the different colours for the lights coming through. The green light, your amber, and your red for your service indicator. So we're going to have to try and clean up that rubber strip now and see if we can get anything better, and whether this will display anything better or anything a little more usable. And this might be our secret weapon. So this is Deoxit contact cleaner. Can be pretty expensive, but it can be decent stuff as well. So this is the gold one. There is a standard red one, which is also sort of fairly common. The gold one, I guess, is better designed for gold contacts, and we do have the gold contacts in there. So I'm going to clean the contacts in there first off. Now in this case, it really isn't going to be the fact that they're dirty, because these are all kept fairly clean and out of dust and grime and no sort of movement on them. This is something you'd often use for game cartridges, for example, to help clean them up. If you've got an old Nintendo, an NES or something along those lines, and your cartridge is playing up, you'll often see people using Deoxit to clean the contacts. But this one, again, it's fairly clean, but you know, we can always go a little bit cleaner. And this Deoxit is the kind of stuff you can leave on as well, and it helps sort of protect them from any more contact corrosion. So that's a good bit of a rub now on those. So those should be nice and clean. And again, you can see there's no dirt really on the end of that swab. So that's our display with the rubber strip, and this rubber strip will just come off. So if I can get into there, yeah, he will just pull off. I'm just trying to make sure I don't get as little fingerprints around here as possible. And this comes off. So this is what I would call the sort of the zebra strip. The black bits in the middle is conductive carbon rubber, and it conducts electricity just straight up, because you have a black strip of something conductive, insulating, conductive, insulating, conductive, insulating. So any power doesn't go sideways through these. It always goes from one side just directly to the other and passes it through into that strip. And if we can just sort of catch that in the light, those little bands there, they're all the contacts that we have to go into the display. So we're going to give that a bit of a clean up now as well, and see if that helps. And in fact, I realised if we zoom right in, you can actually see all those tiny little black stripes. So that side there, that's the side that would have gone down onto the board. As you can see, like a bit of a step in it, as it would have sat over stuff. And the flatter side would have been against the glass. So I'm going to put this back together now and see if we're any better. And no, so we're still at the same. Even with me putting pressure down onto it to hold it down, we still have just the top half lighting up and no real change on that. That might have been, maybe that was trying to say 272 something or another. So I think then we must have contacts are worse on the other side. So let me see if we can get into the back of there. Now to get in further, we're going to need to get rid of some plastic. So here, there, there's another one just there, another one there. These are kind of plastic rivets. That black plastic is from the back case, and obviously it came through the board, and then it was sort of heat molded out to spread out and acted like a big rivet. We've got another one over there and one over there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut those out, and we're going to then separate the back from the front. You can see there how we've got a little split in them as well. That's as this thing's, the plastic would have been pretty hot as it was put through. Something would have stamped into there which would have expanded it out like a rivet. That little tear obviously doesn't really do anything, but it's the rest of that plastic holding the front and the back together. We're getting it up, but we're still not out because it is tight on that ribbon cable that would go to that little driver board, which is the one for your MPG display. So I'm going to unsolder those 4 little wires, and then we should be able to pull him off that little ribbon cable. So to get him apart, I had to unsolder that ribbon cable that comes off our driver board for our MPG. I had to do these plastic rivets. There, one there. There's one there hiding in the middle, and one over there, and maybe one there as well. So the heads of those had to be cut off with some side cut pliers, and then our tricky bit, and this is the most awkward bit of the lot, is these clips. So on the outside of these plugs you have these plastic clips, and they will flex a little bit. I'm just gonna struggle to hold it there, but they need to be kind of pinched in to get them out of the plastic. So that involves, usually I get one of these little picks, and I'm to poke a pick down in there and try to then push that leg in to get him to clip out of the back shell. So a bit of a pain in the arse, but you can do it. Take your time, and then we'll get the whole lot out. They're going to be fun getting back in, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And inside now, there is all of our contacts that would run through for our strip for our LCD display, and I do see what looks like a bit of corrosion there or something. I don't see any capacitors nearby. I mean, there's some over there, but there's none super close, so I don't think that would be from a leaking capacitor, but certainly looks a bit grubby. But I'm going to give that a clean up, and I'm going to go and resolder all of these pins, and hopefully that might be our issue, and we'll just have to keep on going till we find out what goes wrong. Oh, there we go. That is the clicker relay. That's what makes the noise when you put your indicator on, and also does the horrible buzz when you leave your lights on, mainly because your hazard relay is under the bonnet on an E36, so you can't hear any ticking inside the car. So they stick in a relay there whose only job is to just click to make a noise, so you know you've got your indicators on. There you go, something else you've learnt today. So let's give this a bit of a clean up and see if we can spot anything else going on weird, any other damage underneath that messy spot. Well, our messy spot cleaned up, but I think that will be the issue. It's very hard to see on that one, but there's a little bit of a ring around there, and I think that is a cracked solder joint. And I'd say there's one on that one too. So it's very hard to see. It's a bit easier for me on the microscope, but there's a bit of a ring around there, and that's what a cracked solder joint will look like. About halfway up that cone you see sort of a change in slope, or any kind of lines or anything that go around it. That is the possibility of a cracked joint. Now I would say I wouldn't bother looking for cracked joints on these kind of things, because they are very hard to see. And if you are going to be doing something similar, just reheat and remelt and maybe a little bit more solder onto those joints. So I've just done that now. I did add a bit of solder in, as some of it would suck through into the holes, and you could tell it sort of going through more onto the other side. So adding a bit more. So we have a nice cone. Can we sort of zoom in on those a little bit? Focus is starting to go, but there we have them now. So let's see what happens, and is our mileage back. So now we have our moment of truth. Power, yeah, there we go. So that's it. It has some bad solder joints there. And now we can read our mileage nice and clear. And yeah, you can see how like the kilometre bit isn't really lit up. The tamper dot isn't on there. But we do have 137,542. So now I can carry on with the rest of the job. Celebratory coffee as we're back on track, and now we need to go into our original job. So this is our main EEPROM where the mileage is stored. As I said, it's also on the coding chip plug, the coding chip, which is just on the other side of these pins. So we're going to have to unsolder this. Now you can see that orange stuff around there. That's this conformal coating, which is kind of like a sealer, I suppose, to keep out moisture, but it can stick that chip down. So there can be a little bit of a pain to get off. But there is our chip, and we have B58323, which I believe is a 93C46. Although don't quote me on that just yet. So there's our chip off now, and I've just cleaned up the pads as well. And yeah, you can see those two red dots, and that is little spots of glue that glued that chip onto that spot before they went and did the soldering. So they glue the chip on, and then they come and solder it to solder all the legs down. So you can heat up the chip, and obviously you'll melt all the solder on the legs, but remember, you've got those little spots of glue underneath, so it can need a little bit of force to come up, but you've got to make sure that you're not forcing it too much when some of the pads aren't unsoldered, as you could rip the pad off. But we've got him off, so now what we've got to do, stick him in a programmer and read our data. And we have it read, and there is our data. So that highlighted bit is where the mileage is in this chip. So yeah, 93C46 was correct, and this here is our mileage. It is byte reverse, so it is EF34, EF35, 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 and that number, the EF35, is the one that would match up with the 137,000 miles we have. So it is stored in miles in this one, and now that we know the algorithm, we're then going to change it to our target, which I think is 96,500, and that's our data change. So it's F438, and again F438, F438, F438. So we go to program using our socket, and there we go, it has programmed and verified, so we can solder this one back on. And there we go now with the coding plug. So this little adapter, again, all it does is sort of change the pitch, but it works out perfectly fine for plugging in one of these coding plugs. This was just a little adapter, I think, that came with, what was this thing? An EEPROM test clip gadget, but it generally just changes the pin spacing, and it works out fine to plug that thing in. We've read our file, and there we go again, and you can see the top two lines. That's the mileage we saw in the last one, so we'll need to edit that one again to match our new mileage. So there we have our new mileage ready to go. Hit program, in, verified, and we're done. So now what we need to do is stick this coding plug back in, we'll power it up and see what we've got. And now our new moment of truth. Wonderful. So 96,480, so 20 miles short of the 500, but close enough to keep everyone happy. And you can see there's no tamper dot on there. The tamper dot on this one would come up if the data in our front chip, there he is, soldered back on, and our coding plug wasn't matching up. So that's all happy and all nice and clean on that dial. Now all of the figures and numbers showing up nice and clear. So now we just got to put him back together, and remember that I've got to solder those connections back on and then box him back up. Well, that wasn't fun, but I did manage to get it. I did try and be smart and decide to grab that first leg you see over here with a pair of side cut pliers, but he just snipped the end off, but I can see the end of it sticking through there. So as long as I get that soldered, we should be all right. So that's our soldering done. Now these will need to go back on as well. Now these obviously they used to stick into those plastic plugs which aren't there anymore, but this whole thing is going to be sort of held together anyway with our screws. So we'll set that stuff all up and get our front case on. Once you see those studs sort of poked through and pretty much flush, you know you're okay. So there we go. In fact, there, look at that. We have a mystery button just there. As on this one, we do have, that's our trip reset button there underneath that rubber, which will be poked by the little stalk that comes out the front. But I think maybe it's some of them that might have had time and the clock maybe built into it. There was the possibility of another button, but not fitted on this particular one. So now we've got to stick on the rest of our, I suppose, our front glass, you could call it. And there we go. So mileage set to something new to suit the car that it's going into. Our display all fixed, and our ECU deimmobilized, ready for our engine swap. So that's the lot done. I'm going to pack this up now and send it off. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.